we're live. Just kidding. We're not live. Hey, everyone. This is Shang, your host. I do have a couple of co-hosts today since Addie is out. But today we have a wonderful, wonderful guest with us, and we will have him introduce himself in just a second here. But we are so excited to have him. So for co-hosting today, we have Birdie, who is back from our Hmong Women in Beauty. And then we also have Cowley Lore, who will be co-hosting today and just kind of hanging out. So do you guys want to chat a little bit about yourselves, and we can get to Bryan right away?
Yeah. Like Shing said, I was in the previous episode of their podcast here. My name is Birdie. I am owner and artist of Plea Beauty LLC in Wausau.
My name is Cowley. I am actually Shing's sister. I am a student, so I don't.
We don't know why
I
you're
don't have any
here.
awesome credentials at all.
Oh,
but,
stop.
Or any experience in this, but I'm just here to hang out.
And so we have with us today Bryan Vue from the St. Paul area in Minnesota. He recently just, I guess you produced, right? Produced, wrote, directed. You did everything.
Yes.
For the movie The Stranger, which is actually how I got to know of you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what you're working on right now?
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, thanks for having me here. It's good to be back in my hometown, Eau Claire. Yeah, I'm Bryan Vue, and I live in the cities now, but I spent about a decade here in Eau Claire, and then went to Madison and moved up to the Twin Cities ever since then, and haven't been back here for a very long time. So the current project that I'm working on is called The Stranger, as you mentioned, and it's a film that I wrote, produced, directed, and had some acting parts in it too.
Oh, you acted in there too.
Very small. Okay, couldn't find anybody to fill my that role that I was looking for, so stepped in there. But anyway, it's a film that is currently out in theaters, selected theaters. We've had 3 showings in the past month or so, mostly in the Twin Cities area. AMC in Roseville a couple times, and in Minneapolis, and then we've got actually another show coming up on January 11th at St. Anthony Main Theater in Minneapolis. So if you're up in the Twin Cities, check it out. 7 p.m. Really cool venue. That's where they host the St. Paul Minneapolis International Film Festival.
Wow.
So yeah, pretty cool. Exciting event.
Can you give us a premise? So I watched the trailer of The Stranger. It's really creepy. I love creepy thrillers.
We all know.
Yeah.
You're a real creepy, Shing.
I am, and I love it. It's so it's. I feel like this is one of the first movies, especially like directed, written, produced by a Hmong director that I'm really excited about because it's exactly the genre that I love. So can you tell us like what the movie's about without giving too much away?
I'll try. It won't be easy because there's a lot of spoilers to be spoiled.
Oh, don't give us any spoilers.
No, I would try my best not to, but it's not as scary as it looks, I gotta say. But there are some moments that are startling. I think the movie is more of a drama, suspense, mystery than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a film that and it can be very dark. I mean, I have to admit, there's some dark moments in it, and there's some light moments, and there's some happy, joyful moments too. But there's even some action here and there, some comedy. But most of it is drama, and it's pretty dark, kind of throughout the film. But and if I had to classify it, I would call it more of a kind of a tragedy kind of film. And like with all tragedies, there's some scary moments. So that's where some of that creepiness comes in.
Sure. So how did this come about?
It started about 10 years ago. I was laying in bed with my 2-year-old son at the time, putting him to sleep and reading to him. And then suddenly it all dawned on me, and I had to pinch myself and I asked myself, am I really here? Am I really here with this beautiful boy? And, it just kind of made me question a lot of things about my reality, my life here in America. Kind of, it's that reflection that you have in your life where that moment in your life where everything's going really well, and you gotta just kind of question yourself.
Like you can't quite believe that it's going so well.
Like, is this real?
Is this real? Is this happening to me?
Yeah.
Is this guy that I'm laying down with? Is he for real? It's just so many things were going through my head, and it kind of spawned the idea of The Stranger. So the idea is that the main guy, the character, the lead, our hero, not so much a hero, but our main character, he's living this beautiful life, living the American dream. He's Hmong, of course, having survived the war and the trauma of coming to America and so forth, the whole refugee experience. But then he lost his family during the Exodus. And that's the part of the tragedy is that he lost his whole family. He was the lone survivor, came to America, and now he's living, we don't show too much of that, but it's in flashback mode. But we start here in the present and focus on what his life is now and how it is now. And but then one day his brother shows up and kind of knocks on his door and says, "Hey, I'm here. Don't you remember me?" And he's like, "No, I don't know what you're talking about." So, but his brother supposedly had also died, and so it kind of brings back to light a lot of things that happened in the past. So now he's going to deal with that.
Sure. So you said that this idea came to you about 10 years ago, Bryan?
Yeah.
10 years ago?
It's been a while.
Yeah. So how did you go about getting supporters and finding your actors, and how did that all come about?
Well, it actually started, so at that time when I had this idea, I wanted to make a feature at the time of The Stranger. But having been kind of out of the loop of filmmaking for a while, so I had done a lot of documentary work prior to narrative films. My passion was always to do, narrative films growing up, but I kind of stopped, did a lot of documentary work, and then 10 plus years ago, I said, no, you know what? It's time to do what I really want to do, and that is to tell stories and, do narrative filmmaking. And so I had this really good idea, The Stranger, and I went to a buddy of mine who is actually a filmmaker and professional filmmaker who's been doing this for years and years. And I said, hey, Mark, help me out. How do I get started? I got this really cool idea. I hadn't written the script yet. It was just a concept. Yeah, it was a concept. But it was burning inside of me, and I knew I wanted to do something before I lost it. So he said, well, you don't have to do a full feature with it. You can just do a short. And I'm like, well, what's a short? Because at the time, not too many people had heard of short films.
Short films really weren't a thing yet back
No,
in the day.
not really. No, not until recently. And so I'm like, I really don't want to do a short, though, because I really wanted to, give it
like the full-length story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I could tell the story in 10 minutes or less. But I did anyway. So I spent a weekend writing the short and shot it in a weekend with a friend of mine. And so we actually started with a short film.
Gotcha.
So we use that as a kind of a...
like a basis.
Basis, kind of a teaser to see if we would even be able to get any interest. And, sure enough, some people have probably seen it. I took it off YouTube now because, of course, it was so, it was old. It's old, and it wasn't the best quality. So, of course, I don't want to give the spoiler away, too, because it's all in there. But I did the short, and people loved it. And they said, well, you got to do that feature. And I said, oh, okay, we'll see if we'll see how it goes, So I put it on hold for a few years, and then I made my first feature film called Journey to the Fallen Skies, which I don't know if you guys have seen it yet or not, but we actually won an award at the 2012 Minneapolis-St.Paul International Film Festival. And long story short, after I did the feature Journey to the Fallen Skies and we won an award for it, I'm like, okay, I'm done with The Stranger. Let's move on. Let's do something else. But it just kept coming back to me. The ideas kept, haunting me, so to speak, and knocking on my door and said, you're not done with me yet. You said you're going to do a feature, and you're not done. We only did a short, so here I am doing it.
And here you are.
Yeah, here I am talking about the feature.
So we talked a little bit too. So you and I corresponded a little bit through texting and messaging, and so you have a contract essentially with AMC and looking for sponsors so that we can get this movie here, which is what we're dying for here in the AMC theaters here. How does one go about helping support this so that the movie can be shown in more of their local theaters?
Yeah, first of all, I really don't have a contract per se with AMC, but I've been working with them to get, like for example, in Minnesota, getting a couple of the theaters at AMC. And it's a long, tedious process. It started months and months ago. So I'm not under contract to stay with them. We can use other theaters.
Oh, gotcha.
But they are available in town, and I know there's a few theaters too. So we're open to any theater that's willing to show The Stranger. And what I'm looking for is sponsors, people that would be willing to sponsor the ad, before the film starts,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can, at least pay for the theater, because it's not easy, it's not cheap.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can do that, then we can keep the cost down of admission so that more people can see it.
Sure.
And so as we're speaking right now, I'm still in communications with AMC, waiting for them to get back to me with a final answer to see if we can do something in mid-January, if not February. So my idea is that, now that I've done a bunch of showings in Minnesota, and we've had a really good turnout and really good feedback from the viewers and so forth, I feel like it's time to, make that trek downward and come back to my roots in Wisconsin. And I don't know, we'll see where it goes after that, but let's focus one city at a time. But hopefully we can start here in Eau Claire. So,
Awesome.
yeah, hopefully we can make that work.
So now living in the cities, do you feel that there's more opportunities there for somebody who is a creative director, writer, producer, someone in your field? Would you say that there's better opportunities there for among individual versus here in Eau Claire?
Just a little bit more, only because you get more people and more resources.
Sure.
For example, you had the question of how do I find my cast and crew, and
Yeah.
to answer that question, all of them were unpaid. All my actors, all my crew members, they were all unpaid. Everybody volunteered their time. It took us almost 2 years to shoot the film, if not more. But it took about 5 years from the day that I finished the script to the day that we said wrap, and also the post work and so forth. So, living in the Twin Cities, of course, gives me the opportunity to, seek out support from other people, both Hmong and non-Hmong. So we had a pretty diverse cast and crew, as you can see in the movie too. And that was kind of intentional, because I wanted the film to have a cross-cultural feel.
Sure.
Yeah.
Which would be more true to life too, I would say.
Yeah, right? I agree. Because we live in America,
Yeah.
and this is a film about growing up in America and living the American dream and experiencing, what that feels like. Even if you're a Hmong person, I mean, you can't. We don't live on an island or some separate colony away from the rest of white America, especially here in the Midwest. Being still the minorities, even if we are, one of the biggest minority populations, but still, I mean, we're still predominantly a minority group.
Yep.
So especially here in Eau Claire, but even up in the Twin Cities. I mean, so I feel like you can't get away with that. You can't get away from that.
It would almost be a disservice, because you'd be detaching maybe the story itself with the audience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the whole point of the movie was to show how one Hmong person's experience over time has changed and what his life is like now. And being successful in this country isn't necessarily, I mean, you can be successful by yourself, but you need
resources.
You need resources.
You need
You need
people.
people. Exactly.
Absolutely.
I mean, by yourself, you can only do so much. So
I actually have a question based on that. So the main character of the movie, you said he originally is from Laos as well. So I didn't see the trailer, but
Bad. Just kidding.
sorry. I know I should have prepared myself, but so I didn't see the trailer. But just with your history, being born in Laos and coming here, your ideas and like the scenes in your movie, is there any truth behind some of those scenes?
Is there any
To
parallel?
your history?
It's actually a very good question.
Well, I am basing it off on our history. There are a lot of scenes. The flashback scenes are scenes about the crossing of the Mekong River, our struggles coming over. And there's, of course, as a writer and as a filmmaker, you can't help but insert a lot of your own experiences. So I would be lying if I said, no, this is based on
It's made
Johnny.
up.
It's
Yeah,
completely
made up.
somebody else.
Yeah. This is someone else, not mine. But I mean, yes. So there is a little bit of that. But of course, it's a film. At the end of the day, it's a fictional film and it's a story. So there are a lot of fictional things with it. But yeah, it's based on
Based on your experiences.
my experience. Exactly.
So building off of her question, are there any characters from either film of yours that you kind of maybe modeled after maybe yourself, or that you felt like you related to or connected to the most?
Journey, for example, Journey, I mean, you'll have to see it for yourself, but Journey is a very, very introspective film about one person's journey, and there's a lot of spoilers in Journey as well, so I can't talk too much about it. But yes, I mean, with Journey, it's about a guy who goes back in his dying days, wants to go back to Laos and visit his father's grave before his time is up. Because when he left Laos, his father died, and they didn't get a chance to bury him, and he didn't get a chance to say goodbye. So it was his tribute to go back and search for his father's grave and say goodbye. And it's kind of my dream too. In real life, my father died when I was 2 during the war, and I never got to say goodbye formally, and so I kind of based it off of that. But my other filmmakers, guys that I worked with, Mong Vang, Puma Shong, and Hua Yang, who's our star, we all worked on this together, and we all had that idea of a guy going, that it was dying, and what would he do in his dying days? And 3 out of 4 of us had lost our fathers before, so we kind of like the idea of, okay, well, what would we do, And I think for a lot of us, we want to be kind of reconnected with our parents, or for us, it was our father, whom we never got to meet. So this journey was about that. Now, The Stranger is, I feel like the character, the lead in there, in some ways does reflect not just me, but I think a lot of us that grew up here in America, especially at a young age, or even were born here. And we think that sometimes we are immune, or we think that we are so
like we can live this life now.
We can live this life independently of our
but our cultural
people,
roots are always there.
Exactly, and we forget that sometimes. And so even for myself growing up here, especially here in Eau Claire with, only a few other Hmong families.
Predominantly white.
Yep. Wishing that you were white, growing up in that kind of life where, oh God, I wish I had a family that had money, had cars, had a house. I wish we weren't moving every other month from one rental to another. I wish I had basketball shoes so I could play basketball on the team.
Sure.
It was that kind of life growing up here.
And I think a lot of that resonates with all of us in this room. We've got other people behind the scenes here, guys. Right. And we're all Hmong in this room. And whether we are the first generation or somebody that was born in the third world country, whether it's Laos or Thailand, and coming here, I was born here. So even with me, I can relate so much to what you're saying and feeling like you're not enough Hmong and you're not enough white or the American. Like the peer, or the peers that you have around you. So not feeling like you're, especially in our family, we went to Catholic school. So a lot of it was predominantly white, very wealthy or well-off individuals. And so you looked at yourselves or ourselves and we were just like, we can't connect. So I wish we were more than that. And now looking back, I am grateful for that, but I don't feel that anymore. I'm very proud to be Hmong. So I guess my question then for you would be, where are you at now in terms of your identity with being an American, but also being Hmong? And what does that mean to you?
I mean, that's
a huge question.
It's deep, yeah. That's like
we're getting really deep.
Yeah, we are. I ask myself that every day, actually, and in fact, I didn't get to talk about my other side, my other life, the other career that I have, but actually,
we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I'll bring that in too, so I can kind of answer that question because, so filmmaking is what I do as a passion. It's what I've always wanted to do since I was 12. But I never got a chance to do that. I didn't go through schooling. I lived back in the analog age where it was hard to get a hold of a camera. I mean, literally, it was impossible to get a hold of a camera. And so I took a different path, and I became a social worker, and I work with kids because that was my second passion. My first passion was making films, but when I realized that wasn't going to go too far, I turned to my other passion of working with the kids, and that's been my career for most of my life, is working with kids, youth, and family. So one of my old clients reached out to me on Facebook the other day, messaged me and said, "Hey, Bryan, I got this little dilemma. You worked with me when I was in middle school, and I just got to ask you, how do you balance life? How do you balance between work, school, spouse, kids, whatever,
and your passion,
and so forth?" Yeah. But the question that he said or asked me was, how do you know when what you're doing is good enough? And when do you say, enough to other people? And how do you, at what point do you feel like, you are being the best that you can be?
Mm-hmm.
And it made me thinking, got to thinking about that, about my own identity, and asked myself that question. Okay, well, if I were to, how do I put this? If I were to judge myself today, would I be content with myself, with who I am?
So what he was asking you was for a way to measure success and balance.
Yeah, in a way. And how do you know when you're happy with yourself, and how do you find that medium, that balance? Because as a Hmong person, and I know Hmong women you guys have your own struggles too, as far as identity. But for us Hmong men, it's always about, am I good enough? Am I man enough to do? Can I cook? Can I chop up meat? Can I sharpen knives? Can I, can you drink and slam a beer? Whatever. So it's all these questions, that we get thrown at us from time to time. And I think at this point in my life, I've gotten to accept the fact that, I'm never going to be Hmong enough. And I'm okay with that. I'm learning, though. For example, I still carry on the tradition of the Hmong New Year, the traditional Hmong New Year. And I just did mine yesterday. Ooh, I'm tired. So if I look tired, it's because I was up all night killing chickens and doing my Hmong New Year.
Sure.
Okay. Because it was such a nice day, and we missed out on it because of my showings back in November. So, finally we got a break in the weather. So my wife and I decided we got to do this before the end of the year. So I still carry on that tradition, even though I was baptized, Lutheran coming here. But I felt a few years ago, I felt like it was my calling to kind of keep up, keep my tradition alive. So, parts of me, most of me feel like I am Hmong. And I know now where I've always known where I came from and who I am. There's no question about who I am. But growing up, it was different. Growing up was different. When you're growing up in a white community or a Caucasian community, and everybody around you is white, and they have,
and you're the only one that's different.
Exactly. Yeah. And not only that, you don't have anything. You have, like I said before, you have no money. You have only one parent who's not working, who's living on his food stamps, and you're like wishing you had what all your friends had. And so back then, of course, you grew up with this thinking that you wish you were white and you wish you could have what they have. And so, but that was way back then. And now that I've got my own kids and I live in a community,
things are a little bit different now.
It's
seeing where you are now and seeing where, even as like the 10-year-old version of you, what advice would you give to him now? And do you think that would be something that would be beneficial to the 10-year-old you? And what would that look like?
The 10-year-old me started watching a lot of movies and wanted to be a filmmaker early on. So, there's a ton of things I would have, said to myself, like, hey, learn as much as you can and keep experimenting and don't stop, because I started experimenting with cameras, even though I didn't have access to one. My brother Charles actually worked as one of the first hosts of the Hmong TV show in Eau Claire back in the 80s. And back then we were shooting everything on VHS. And so I got him to rent or borrow the VHS camera and shot my first short film. I didn't know I was making a movie at the time. I was just like pointing and shooting. I said, hey, Charles, do this.
Now we got to know what this movie's about. We got to circle back now.
Yeah. Well, now when I think about it, I named it The Chase or something. And it was one of Bruce Lee scenes where I chased my nephew down the stairs from the top floor of our duplex to the bottom, and I beat him up every step of the way. So I wish.
Very violent.
Talk about real
I
life.
wish I could find that. Yeah, it is. To this day, we're still competitive, all because of that. He still wants revenge after me because of that. He's like, you were much bigger than me. I'm like, yeah, I was just a little bit bigger than you by a foot. But anyway, so it kind of started back then. So I wish I would have told myself, and I would go back and tell myself, hey, just keep playing with it. Keep doing it. It's, someday you're going to get to where you want to be. But at the same time, I'm glad I didn't go to film school either right away, because Like I said, it would have been it would have been expensive. It would have been unaffordable, and it would have been, I don't know, maybe in some ways even a waste of time because, and then I would have been burnt out.
And you wouldn't have that to fuel your passion
I
anymore.
would not know.
Yeah.
Because I knew a lot of guys that did it, and they were trying so hard. They got their masters in fine arts, but they were fighting the system and fighting the technology. I mean, during that analog era, I mean, you would be buying thousands of dollars worth of equipment, which would then the
Sure.
next year go extinct, and so on
That's
and so forth.
technology too,
And-
though.
well,
Yeah.
right. And it's still going on that way. So it got to the point where, you got to stop playing catch up with technology.
Mhm.
And that's what happened is I stopped. I said, you know what, fine, I'm done with, trying to learn everything about the newest gadget out there.
Mhm.
And so had I gone to film school back then, I think I would have been really discouraged.
Sure.
And so part of me says, I'm glad I didn't do that and pursue that dream right off the bat. And so instead I went to do what I love to do too, and that's work with kids. So I went to study psychology in Madison, got my degree from there, and then I moved up to the cities, got married, and got my master's in social work, and now I'm doing social work on the side. Well, primarily social work as my career, but doing films on the side, which I've always wanted to do. So I feel like I've got the best of both worlds. So
Absolutely.
I think I would just tell myself, good job. Just don't, just trust
Just
yourself.
do yourself.
Be patient. Someday you'll tell your story, but just be patient. So, I mean, obviously there's always room for improvement.
Yeah, I
but-
think that just reminds me kind of myself too. Like, don't you think it's funny how like things just work out like that? It like I try to believe in fate, and I try to believe that everything happens for a reason. And sometimes I question things, but I think it's true what you say. Like you just have to believe in yourself, and eventually things will fall into place. And so I think that's great that you feel like you don't have, the way you're talking, you don't have regrets, and you don't have doubts of what you've done so far, which I
No.
think is great.
No, because I feel like the life experiences that I went through and the career path that I chose, and in meeting the people that I met along the way, working with the kids and families, their struggles, learning about their struggles, helped me with my own struggles. And then it gave me stories to tell. Because at the end of the day, filmmaking is about storytelling. At least for me it is. I'm not all about the CGI effects. I'm not all about just eye candy movies. At this point in my life, I don't have time to waste on a comedy,
Right.
which I couldn't do anyway because I'm not a very
So,
funny guy.
what was the moment in your life that you decided that you wanted to do films? Like, was there a film that inspired you, or maybe something that you saw that just kind of was like, it was like the moment where it clicked and you're like, yeah, this is like my passion now. This is
Aside
what I
from
wanna
Bruce
do.
Lee.
Yeah, aside from Bruce Lee,
And
of
beating
course.
up your brother.
So aside from that, because of course every Asian kid grew up wanting to be Bruce Lee.
Bruce
For
Lee,
sure.
Jackie Chan.
Jackie Chan,
Or
Bruce
Jet
Lee,
Li.
Jet
Jet
Li. But aside from that, the movie Blade Runner, which I don't know if you've seen, it's a sci-fi, classic sci-fi. I think that was the first film that I saw that I said, you know what? This is my inspiration. This is why I would want to make a movie.
What was it
Because
about the film that?
it was just the way it was shot, the way it was, the story. I think more than anything, kind of just resonated with me. I mean, the idea of, it's a very character-driven film, and I love sci-fi, so that's my favorite genre. It's always been my favorite genre of all times. And if I could do, if I had the budget, I would do a sci-fi tomorrow. So, but it's not just a sci-fi though; it's a sci-fi with a really great story. And of course, you got Harrison Ford, and so that helps. And so Blade Runner was like the first film that I saw that really blew me away and said, you know what, you've got to do narrative filmmaking, and you've got to get back into it because this is the kind of story that you want to tell. And so I think that was part of the film that really kind of kickstarted me. But then I didn't do anything for years after that either. I mean, I was
Right.
still trying to learn and
You were just letting it all marinate for a little
it
while.
was just kind of sinking in.
Yeah.
And, because making a movie was not going to be cheap. And when I first had an idea to make a movie back, back in the '90s, talked to a buddy of mine and said, hey, you know what? Let's do a movie together, because he was a filmmaker. graduated with a film degree, and he said, "Oh, you know, Bryan, you know what? Do you have 100,000?" I'm like, "No, I don't."
In my back pocket, I do.
Yeah, right. Is that what it's gonna cost me or take me? He said, "Yeah, at least 100 grand." I said, "Are you kidding me?" So it was just so everybody I talked to was like very discouraging. It's like, I mean, it is all about money at the end of the day. But so when we made our first feature, Journey to the Fallen Skies, for a measly 15,000 with a grant, we got a grant from the state, from the Jerome Foundation to do that. But even for 15 grand to make a feature, it blew a lot of people away. I mean, it was like, whoa. I mean, granted, Blair Witch did it for what, 6,000.
I was going to say, there's a lot of really, popular or somewhat successful movies and shows that are on a very small budget. Is there one that not even just a small budget movie or show, but is there one right now that you're just like, that is exactly the kind of work I want to do?
There's a movie made by Robert Rodriguez called El Mariachi for under 7,000.
Wow. How does that even work?
Yeah. And at the time, he was just an inspired filmmaker, and he raised all the money from donating blood and whatever, scraping money. I mean, just literally scraping every penny he could get, and shot this awesome film. To this day, I still think it's his best film. I don't care what he's done ever since then, but
It's called
El Mariachi.
El Mariachi.
It's
I'll have to check that out.
Robert Rodriguez film. One of my favorite all-time low-budget films. I mean, it still beats out even all the high-budget films out there when it comes to like action and music. And so I mean, there's a lot of great films that have been made, for a very, very small budget, and that's why I always go back to stories, because stories are king. I mean,
stories stand the test of time. Character development is also
the
very
audience.
important.
Yeah. In the end, that's what the audience connects to.
Absolutely. I mean, because if you don't have a story, I mean, you can have all the expensive gadgets and money in the world, but I mean, like Star Wars. I mean, gosh, I mean, I'm a big Star Wars fan, but not of the newer Star Wars stuff. I mean, when you look at the old Star Wars, the original Star Wars, I mean, the special effects were like, you can laugh at it, but you know what?
The story was awesome.
The story kept you in it.
It's still
The
really popular
characters.
because of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can't beat that.
So when you get a moment to catch your breath here with The Stranger, what's next for you? Are you working on something else, or are you going to just take some time off?
Well, right now I'm just trying to get the movie out. I
Sure.
really want to get the movie out. People have been asking me about that. I definitely want to do more, but a lot of it depends. I mean, it just really depends on money, time, energy, resources. You know, with A Stranger, we spent way too long on it. I got to the point where some of my cast and crew were like, "Are we done yet? Are we done yet?" And one of my star almost actually had to leave in the middle of the shoot. He was going to up and leave only because he had to relocate. He was thinking about relocating. And I said, "No, you can't. Can you wait another year?" I said, "No, I can't wait another year." But so we ran into a lot of glitches with the time issue because we shot over a period of 2 seasons and only on weekends because everybody being volunteers.
Yeah.
It was hard to do that, quick shoot and be done with and work on the post kind of thing. So with that experience, I'm thinking to myself, I just need a little bit of a time to just break away
Sure.
from that.
Just refocus yourself.
Refocus,
Yeah.
get the movie out, see how it goes. If people like it, then I'll keep going with it. If people think it stinks, then I might just call it quits. I don't know. We'll see what happens. It just,
Never give
Yeah,
up.
don't give
I'm
up.
kidding. I'm kidding. No, I mean,
The future you will come
Don't
back to
stop
this
now.
moment.
My future self would say, "Don't ever give
Don't
up."
ever give up.
No, I would never do that. But
Yeah.
I would say this, though. I will say that it is, time is not on my side because there's so many things I want to do in my lifetime, and telling stories is definitely one of them. But if it's going to come at a cost, then it might affect that. But
Absolutely.
I feel like at this point, if I tell a stranger and if I feel like I've done my justice with a stranger, I feel like
You'll be proud.
My soul can finally rest. And
Yeah.
I won't have anybody knocking at my door. So we'll see what happens after this. But
All right. Well, we thank you so much for being here with us today. I know you're really busy and you're probably having to get back into town tonight. So we thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your time with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. So thanks.
Thank you.
All right.